Amid all the carnage, efforts by Americans to restore a routine to lives that have been numbed by death.
And beyond the acts of terrorism, the diplomatic push to bring the perpetrators to justice. Hello, I'm Michael Holmes.
Welcome back. I'm Colleen McEdwards at CNN Center. Lots to tell you about in CNN's continuing coverage of America's new war. We want to begin with a high-stakes diplomatic mission that is unfolding at this hour in Afghanistan. A delegation from Pakistan is in southern Kandahar for a meeting with Mullah Muhammad Omar, the supreme leader of the ruling Taliban. The Pakistan delegation is delivering a message from the United States demanding the delivery of alleged terrorist Osama bin Laden within 72 hours. And in an exclusive interview, CNN spoke with Pakistan's foreign minister about this mission.
Pakistan has taken very serious note of the threat that has been hurled against Pakistan. We are terribly saddened that a government and a country that we have regarded always as a neighbor, friend, should use such language against a neighbor which is quite clearly in their mind Pakistan.
Well, it promises to be an opening unlike any Wall Street has ever seen. In just more than 6 hours from now, the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ reopen for business. It's the first day back for the markets since last week's terrorist attack, and extra security is going to be in place when the big board opens at 9:30 Eastern Time. Traders will start with 2 minutes of silence, followed by the singing of God Bless America. Not an ordinary day on the markets, as you can see. The exchange's chairman says they have made special plans to mark the ringing of the opening bell.
Yes, indeed, it will be a 9:30 opening to be commemorated by the ringing of the bell from a New York City fireman, a New York City police officer, a Port Authority police officer, and an emergency medical services officer. And yes, indeed, we are ready. We have rebuilt the infrastructure to the point where I'm confident that 85 million Americans can be back in the greatest market in the world.
Well, in New York City, the search for survivors grinds on at what was until last Tuesday the World Trade Center. But as the rescue effort enters day 6, hopes are beginning to dim. You see, no survivors, of course, have been found since Wednesday. New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, however, says the rescue operation will continue while there is still hope. The number of people missing stands at just less than 5,000, 190 of them confirmed dead. Of those, only 115 have been identified. Mayor Giuliani said on Sunday that some bodies may never be recovered.
This was New York City's worst week probably in its history, and it's also been its best week because of the citizens of the city, the people that you see here, the governor, all of the people that they represent. It's really remarkable. I mean, it's probably been the most complex week the city has ever had. The most tragic thing has happened, and the greatest heroism has been displayed, love, support, and I think the city comes out of the week stronger than it entered it.
Well, for the very latest from the former World Trade Center site, we're joined by Alessio Vinci. Alessio, what's happening there?
Well, hello, Michael. More than 6 days after the two World Trade Center towers collapsed, the officials here are still calling the operation a rescue and search operation because they believe that underneath that big pile of rubble there is still the possibility of finding any survivor. As you know, there are more than 5,000 people still missing at this time. Only 190 are the confirmed dead, and the rescue officials here still believe that underneath that big pile of rubble there is a possibility that perhaps underneath the lower level, the ground and the underground levels of the World Trade Centers there were shopping malls, and there was a train station and the subway stations perhaps there. Some of the people may still be alive if indeed they would have perhaps have access to some water and food from the shopping malls or from the restaurants down there. I must tell you, there is a lot of frustration here among the rescue workers, especially because after the said 6 days, the only thing that have been taken out of this debris are bodies or parts of bodies. However, one scene that we've seen a couple of hours ago as we came here earlier tonight, we saw a crowd of people cheering the rescue workers who were coming out of the area where they've been working all this time. The rescue workers here in very much need of this kind of support from the people of New York, who have been coming here closer to the area where the World Trade Center once stood in order to bring them food, to bring them supplies, and especially to bring them comfort. It is extremely hard. These people are working, these rescue workers are working for up to 12 hours shifts. They are working under dire conditions. There is still a lot of smoke coming out of the debris. It is very hot. We understand that today one of the rescue dogs, one of the search dogs that has been employed by the search teams to locate some of the survivors, has died because of exhaustion. Back to you.
Yeah, that's bad news, Alessio. At what point does it cease to be a rescue operation? I mean, at some point, several days now, 5, 6 days on, is there a time when that will happen, or is it simply a matter of that not being contemplated right now?
You know, Michael, in walking around the area here, looking closely at the debris, one really wonders why the officials here continue to believe that there might be still some people alive underneath this huge pile of rubble. I mean, you must understand, you must remember, perhaps in the first early days of this tragedy, when the two towers were still on fire and then they went down, they collapsed. It is really unlikely, as Mayor Giuliani said, that anybody would be found alive. That Mayor Giuliani said that it would be possible that no bodies would be found, especially because most of them perhaps burned. There was two jetliners that crashed into the towers that were supposed to fly across the United States. They were filled with jet fuel, and that fire certainly has burned many people. And therefore, it is very difficult to say at this point when the operation will begin a recovery operation. It is well now into the 6th day, and the officials here still want to give some hope, especially because perhaps a lot of the people, a lot of the parents and the survivors of this tragedy still believe that there is a possibility that underneath that pile of rubble, some people may still be alive, and therefore, perhaps by trying to keep the spirits high, they want to keep this operation still ongoing and try, perhaps, underneath, as I said, underneath that rubble, be able to find somebody alive.
Okay, looking at those aerial pictures there again, what a scene. Alessio Vinci. Thanks, Colleen.
All right, let's turn to the investigation here for just a moment. Officials who are doing that investigation say that they face a complex web of terrorist organizations, but they are reporting some progress again. On Sunday, arrest warrants were issued for 2 more material witnesses thought to have information vital to the investigation. A pair of material witnesses is already in custody. FBI agents also raided an apartment in New Jersey belonging to 2 men who were detained in Texas. CNN's Eileen O'Connor has details now on the investigation.
On Wednesday, authorities stopped an Amtrak train from St. Louis to San Antonio and took into custody 2 men, Mohammed Jawed Asmath and Ayub Ali Khan, on INS violations. Sources say the 2 had been booked on a flight from Newark to San Antonio on Tuesday. It had been diverted to St. Louis. Law enforcement sources say the men also possessed a chilling item: box cutters. Barbara Olson, wife of the Solicitor General, told her husband on a cell phone call from American Airlines Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon that the men who hijacked her plane used box cutters.
She told me that she had been herded to the back of the plane. She mentioned that they had used knives and box cutters to hijack the plane. She mentioned that the pilot had announced that the plane had been hijacked. I believe she said that. I had to tell her about the 2 airplanes that had hit the World Trade Center.
Law enforcement sources are looking into the possibility that Asmath and Al Khan were headed for this house in San Antonio, owned by a man with a similar last name to 2 of the hijackers. He's now in custody on potential INS violations. They are also looking into this residence in Jersey City, New Jersey. Both Al Khan and Asmath lived here. The FBI searched the home, and sources say are finding the information helpful. They are also looking into the possibilities that other people connected to the hijackers used this address at one time or another. The home in Jersey City is close to the mosque where Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman used to preach before he went to prison for his role in inspiring the first attack against the World Trade Center in 1993. Eileen O'Connor, CNN, Washington.
Well, as it maps out its response to last week's attack, the White House remains mindful of public reaction. Kelly Wallace now reports President Bush and his team of advisors face the sensitive task of reassuring the country while preparing for possible war.
After huddling with his national security team at Camp David, President Bush returned to the White House with the First Lady and urged Americans to try to get on with their lives.
Tomorrow, the good people of America go back to their shops, their fields, American factories, and go back to work. Our nation was horrified, but it's not going to be terrorized.
Mr. Bush in a 15-minute session with reporters showing so many different faces. Disbelief that hijackers could crash into buildings filled with innocent people. Anger when asked about suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden's claim he was not involved, and determination to win the war.
They have roused a mighty giant, and make no mistake about it, we're determined.
The president's words, part of a full-court administration offensive to reassure a jittery public.
We're pursuing over 40,000 leads.
They can't destroy America.
Things have changed since last Tuesday. The world's shifted in some respects.
The administration facing a delicate balancing act, encouraging an anxious country to go back to work while making the case its campaign against terrorists and those who harbor them will not be an overnight solution.
It will take time. It's not a matter of days or weeks. It's years. It's going to take the support of the American people, and I have every confidence it'll be there.
The support is there now. In a CNN USA Today Gallup poll, 86% said they back a military action even if it lasts several months. Support does drop, though, to 66% if a conflict lasts several years. For a public angry about how these tragedies could have happened, Attorney General John Ashcroft says he will send proposals to Capitol Hill in days to strengthen laws targeting terrorists.
We will develop the tools.
While Secretary of State Colin Powell calls for a return to normalcy.
If we stick in our bunkers and walk around afraid, they will have won. Well, we're not a fearful people. We know how to overcome tragedy.
To underscore that point, on Monday, Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill rings the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and Major League players return to the ball fields, while the administration continues planning its response to the worst act of terrorism on U.S. soil. Kelly Wallace, CNN, the White House.
Well, and the attacks have placed U.S. intelligence gathering under intense scrutiny. There are growing calls for a complete overhaul of the system. Some officials suggest changing policy, including the ban on state-sponsored assassinations. Such killings have been banned in the U.S. for the past 25 years, but some lawmakers say it is time now to lift that ban.
The reality is, if you're dealing with a terrorist, the only effective defense you have is good intelligence that leads you to who they are, where they are, what they're planning to do, and then the capability to apply that good intelligence in order to take them out before they can commit another September 11th. And if that means that you have to take them out through an assassination method, I think as painful as that is, if the choice is that or the rubble of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, I would have to opt for the assassination.
Well, some U.S. officials and President Bush have said that Saudi dissident Osama bin Laden remains the prime suspect in the investigation into the attacks. But both bin Laden and Afghanistan's ruling Taliban continue to deny any involvement. On Sunday, bin Laden issued a statement to the Arabic television network Al Jazeera. He said, and this is a quote here, "I would like to assure the world that I did not plan the recent attacks, which seem to have been planned by people for personal reasons. As for me, I've been living in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and following its leader's rules. The current leader does not permit me to exercise such operations." Well, as we mentioned off the top of the program here, our continuing coverage, a high-level Pakistani delegation is in Afghanistan to meet with the ruling Taliban and deliver a message from Washington as well. Mike Chinoy joins us now from Islamabad with the very latest on this. Mike?
Colleen, the Pakistani delegation is headed by the chief of the country's military intelligence, the